In this video, we're going to be discussing the cost control in the receiving process. So, of course, in the receiving process, we're going to be focusing on the vendor deliveries. And when they come to the restaurant, to our loading dock or our back door, we're going to identify ways that we can receive those efficiently to minimize costs and potential loss. So the receiving process, essentially items are delivered, whether it's to a loading dock or a back door. Then the delivery driver is going to unload those items from the truck. It's important for the person who is receiving the order to make sure that the purchase order and specs are handy. That way they can always refer back to that, because the person who's receiving may not be the person who actually placed the order. Then the delivery driver often has their own copy, and so we want to check the quantity and quality of each item that's coming through. If we have time, we want to check the math. We can just kind of look at it very quickly to see if there's any kind of math that seems off. If for whatever reason we do have to reject an item, then we're going to process that credit memo. If something does not meet our standards, if something does not was not on the purchase order, or if it doesn't exactly match what was requested or ordered, then we can have the option to send it back. And then it's really important to put all those items away, especially focusing on the freezer goods as well as the refrigerated goods, because that is going to help us minimize the cost and the loss of product. And then lastly, we want to make sure we send that invoice to the accounting office so they can make sure that they pay it within the terms. So we're going to talk in class about some required tools. And so things like weight scales, thermometers, any kind of the PO, the purchase order, all those different things are really important for us to have handy so that we can check, are we getting the correct items? Do they meet the specifications that the restaurant needs? And all of this kind of has to do with some training that's involved. And it's really important to train those people, because oftentimes, it might seem like common sense to receive orders and put them away, but oftentimes steps can be overlooked. And so it's really important that the people who are receiving actually have been trained to do so. As far as our delivery schedules, we want to make sure that if it's possible to work with our different vendors. Now, if we have a prime vendor, meaning that we order pretty much everything from one person, then it might be easier to manage that schedule. But if we have a meat provider, if we have a fresh fruit and vegetable vendor, if we have a dairy vendor, if we have a baked good vendor, if we have a seafood vendor, we want to make sure we're managing all those schedules so that one person isn't overloaded and trying to be pulled multiple directions. The other thing is any kind of discrepancies between the purchase order and what actually is delivered needs to be handled. And so that's where training also comes in, so that way the person knows what they're looking for and what to compare that list to. So this is just an example of that credit memo. Now, in Maine, when I worked with the Acadia Institute of Oceanography, their credit memoing primarily was just all digital. And so the driver, if I rejected something, they had a little handheld device. They could scan it, give the particular reason why, and then I would sign on the handheld device, say that I am rejecting this particular item. And then they would just take it with them back on the truck, and they would process that on their end once they finished their delivery.